love to start a class off with creating an art journal. It becomes this amazing way to gather your color palette and your mark making. It becomes a really fun place to have those imperfect sketches or finished works, and they can become these studies that you use later to expand upon or to maybe take it outside of your journal. And so the difference at this time is that we are going to have the fabric and we're going to cover it in plaster, unlike in the past when we've had papers. And we'll just kind of see how it goes and what I feel like doing. Just so you guys know, when I come to a project like this, the gathering is what helps me kind of figure out what's next. And so if you don't know what to do next, I would really encourage you to start with the gathering and bringing things together that you think are beautiful, and then at least you'll know, okay, now I kind of think I know what the next step would be. And I promise you that usually when you start gathering and you do that next step, then that creates your next step. And it's by doing that you'll know what to do next. And you might not know what the finished product's gonna look like, but when you actually allow yourself, the whole purpose of this course, to allow yourself to just explore, to be able to follow what is next, to truly allow yourself to wander and not worry so much about the end, but be excited about where you are in the current process, I think that can end up creating some of the most beautiful art. And so even I do not know how this is going to turn out. I don't have a finished sample that I'm currently going to show you that we're going to do. I gathered. I'm bringing things together that I know that I think I want to, include, and we're just going to figure it out together. So let me talk to you a little bit about these supplies, and then let's start putting things together. So I have some vintage ephemera. And this is just some vintage papers and book spines and wallpaper. I have some mark making tools here, and I'll list some of my favorite things, but we have pattern cutters, we have even some sculpting tools. You can use knives. I always use my mechanical pencil. I love sculpting tools. So all of these things are just going to make marks in the plaster. I have some old book covers, and I'll show you what I'm thinking I'm going to do, but I'm not sure what I'm going to end up doing. I have some photographs. I have some words that I've cut out. I have some paint colors in my color palette. I have some leather, some wire, some cheesecloth, vintage linen, and then I have some of the tools that we're going to use when we do our binding. So we're going to be using some rivets, and here is some canvas that we're going to be covering in plaster. Now you have a few choices here. You can have this dry plaster of Paris and that you mix with water. And I'm going to be using just a pre-mixed Venetian plaster, and I'll show you that. And over here to the side, I also have some rusty items that we're going to do some mark making. I have some old railroad tie, like nails, and they have numbers in them, so I'm going to stamp into those. I've also included some other things. I'm not sure if I will use them. I have some sandpaper. And if there's anything else as we're moving along, I'll be sure to point it out and to list it in the supplies. So why don't you get gathering, knowing that you're going to need a cover. So something like this. You are going to need something for your spine. I'm using some vintage French linen. You will need some fabric to put your plaster on. I'm using some drill, some canvas. You could also use drop cloth. You just want it to have a little bit of a weight to it. I have some words from magazines and books. I have some mark making tools. I have some vintage papers. Even if you just have your cover and your spine and your fabric and plaster, you're going to be really good to get started. I have this really cool and really old cover to some ledger paper that I found while I was in Paris a few years ago. So it's quite large and it's quite thick. And so if we can find a tool that will cut it very nice and clean, then I would like to use, part of this as the front or the back, and I want to incorporate this also. It has these really cool metal corners. So we will get a screwdriver and take those off. And I'm excited because I've been holding on to this for a few years, not wanting to throw it out, but not really sure how to use it. So I'm hoping that this will be my cover for this. And so as you're thinking about the size, think about something that encourages you to sketch. And know that you can go and buy really large journals, and you can find just amazing high quality new journals anywhere. So make this a size that you're going to use, that encourages you to create, and that's not so overwhelming and it doesn't seem so daunting. So I will probably keep my front and back cover about this size, and I'll give you all the measurements as we start cutting. So start gathering and let that gathering process lead you to each stage, and what you will put together and what you will find beautiful and what textures and colors speak to you. Okay, what I did is I tried to find the areas on this old ledger cover that weren't as, worn like this. I didn't want that to be included, so I just outlined the areas and the sizes so they're the same. And we're just going to try this with a jigsaw, and if it works well, then it'll be my cover, and if it's not, then we'll find something else. But just in case you have some things that maybe you don't know what to do with them and you could repurpose them in a new way like this, we wanted to show you how we're going to cut this and put it together. So we also have a piece of wood that we're going to use to just kind of guarantee that we have the straight cut, and to kind of lead the jigsaw. Kelly's also clamping that down. And so before he starts cutting, I just wanted to say that, you don't have to have something like this. If you have cardboard, if you have thin wood, if you have book covers, or, even if you have leather pieces, fabric, you can use anything for your covers. And so I'm just trying to repurpose something that I have on hand. So look around and see what you could do also. Well, he was able to do it. It smelled so bad though, guys. I swear, 100-year-old who knows what. So Kelly's a good sport. It's really thick though. It's a really nice thick cover, but it's so cool and so fun, and I finally have a reason to use this. So I'm really excited to use this, and we'll just, obviously it'll be a much thicker cover. But what's kind of fun about this is part of the reason that I'm doing this course is because of the inspiration that I had from the Rodin Museum. Now, his plaster books were super thick and amazing sketches, and so, we're altering that and creating things that are a little different, but using that as the inspiration. So I love that there's going to be this chunkiness still to the covers. So I think I'm going to use this as the cover, and this is the back. And so I'm going to pull things together just for creating this cover and the spine, and then we're going to go from there. All right, here's everything we'll need to get started to just work on the cover and the spine, and to start putting our pages together, our plaster fabric covered pages. And please don't think you have to have exactly what I have. I'm using what I have on hand. I didn't go and buy anything, except I went with the Venetian plaster instead of my plaster of Paris, just for the ease of doing a class. But I have, I had the canvas and the drill. Obviously, I had this on hand. I cut some of my old vintage linen here. And these are the tools that I had. I actually had the rivets on hand too. So look around. What do you have? What could you exchange out? And really be more about the process and what you already find beautiful all around you, and how can you make up your own. Before we get started, the biggest thing that I want to reiterate is that I want you to look around what you have. And so whether it's cardboard, whether it's old book covers, whether you use some of your old art or canvas that you have on hand, really the ideas are limitless. It's just based upon what you find beautiful. So I'm thrilled to use something that I've been holding on to for a while and bring it into this class. And everything that I'm choosing from are things that I already had on hand, except the Valspar Venetian plaster, and that's just because I thought it'd be easier for this class. Most of the time working with plaster, I'm using the plaster of Paris, and I'm just adding water, but because of being on video and the dry time and how quickly it can dry, I just wanted to have the Venetian plaster instead. So go gather what you have on hand, and even if you want, just wait till after the video and take notes throughout the video, the class, in the videos, and let your own mind just think, what would I use instead, or what do I have on hand, or what do I find beautiful, or how can I take that idea that Jeanne had, and maybe that's not for me, but it's gonna spark something in you, and that's what I want you to follow. Before we get started, I wanted you to know kind of the size that I'm using. So it's about 5 1/4 wide and about 7 1/2 long. And I have them, so see, here are the covers, the front and the back. I have opened them up, and I'm placing them about 4 3/4 inches apart. Now I'm trying to just estimate, what the signatures will be with the canvas covered in plaster. And like I said, I'm just kind of letting one thing lead me. And because this did work out, and because they're so thick, I'm making some different changes. And so one of the things, I have this vintage French linen. I love vintage French linen. The weave is really beautiful. It's really nice and thick. It's beautiful to stitch on and to include in your art. So let's move this up a little. Okay, so let me get them so they're even. And with our cuts, it's a little wonky, but that is okay with me. So I'm kind of wanting them to be the same on each side. This is longer, and I can trim this later. So what we're going to do is we're just going to glue these sides down. Now, if you have things different on hand than I do, the thing is, I think about all the things that I could do differently while we're doing this, and one of them is upholstery tacks, okay? So I would still glue it, but then I would come in with upholstery tacks. Now the tacks that I have here, these are cut tacks, they're too long. But upholstery tacks, if you go to a Joann's especially, you're gonna find in the upholstery section these really cool, I did this in one of my first online classes. I took the outer edge of the canvas and I put these black tacks into the side that made it look like an old stretched canvas. And so if you can get the upholstery tacks, I think they would look amazing down each side. And you would also then have it glued just for extra stability. Because I do not have the upholstery tacks, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to add these down the inside, and they're going to be decoration. So they actually will not be holding it, but for the life of me, I cannot find those black upholstery tacks. So I'm just going to move ahead and start. So once you know the positioning, and kind of move it down so you can see that they're about the same. Now, I'm not very specific when I'm doing art, or very, so if they're not perfect, they're perfect enough. So I'm gonna get my glue ready, and I'm gonna get an old brush that I'm not worried about ruining, and we're gonna start gluing it down. I'm just going to apply the the glue here. Just a thin layer. It's opaque, but it's not dripping or too gloppy. I'll just smooth it out, and as you can see, I have this down here that's extra, but that's okay. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I can tell my cut's really crazy. All right. And if you wanted to, you could do hot glue gun at this point too. I'm choosing this because it'll be a little smoother. Okay, those are pretty close, and they're close enough for me. So I'm going to allow them to dry, but while they're drying, I'm going to trim off the bottom. I'm going to straighten this a little bit. Okay, and you can see along the top it can be trimmed also. So there's a little extra here, and there is a little extra down below. The main thing is I want to make sure they come together. And that's going to be the spine that's going to be filled up with all of our fabric plaster pages. Sometimes I say about the journals that I put together for myself, they are so wonky and so imperfect, but it encourages play. And there's something not so precious about it, even though it's full of beautiful bits of history and photos and vintage ephemera. There's something also about it that just seems worn and easy and accessible. And so I hope as you're creating this also, there is that accessibility to what you're creating, that your hands have been on it enough that by the time it is time to create, that you're so comfortable with it that you just open it up and you dive right in. So I have my hot glue gun here, and I have the tacks that I cut the ends off. Just make sure that when you're doing this, I held them in my hand with the cutters and closed it and then cut it so I wouldn't have a piece of metal flying. Keep in mind what I'm going to do now, it's just for decoration. It's not for anything else. So maybe first we'll just see how many will work in this amount of space here. Okay, so about 6 on each side. All right, there's a little extra here that I might cut off with an X-Acto knife. I'm just going to start gluing them down. And I'll keep doing that till I'm done. And I'll meet you back here in just a bit. The next thing we're going to do, so we have all of this done here, is we're going to flip it over. And I'm going to create 3 areas where I'm going to add a rivet. And this is where we're going to add the signatures that we put together with the plastered fabric. The signatures will just be some folded pages that we're going to attach to the spine. Because we're not going to be doing any real Coptic stitch or anything like that, but we are going to be attaching it with some metal. And I really wanted to make sure that the metal wasn't going to eventually tear through of this linen. And that's why we will be adding these rivets at the top and the bottom, and then when we attach our pages, this is where the metal will run through. But I'll explain everything as we go. So right now, the main thing is I'm going to just mark kind of where I think each should go. And I'm going to do that with a sculpting tool, just a thin, it has a nice point on it, okay? You could also use an owl here. And like I said, I haven't measured, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And if you really like to measure everything out, please do that, okay? So I'm just eyeballing it. I know this is going to really bug some of you, huh? All right, so I have these holes that are going to kind of guide me. With a scrap piece of fabric, I want to show you how you will set these, I guess they're not really rivets, they're eyelets. But the first thing is, let's make a hole, and you can make it with any tool you have on hand. So it just has to be large enough that we can fit the eyelet into it. And so this is our finished side. I'll make the hole a little larger. Okay, so I have the eyelet in the fabric, okay? Now here is the anvil. Because this is what will come with your eyelets, I'm going to show you how to use it with this. It'll just make it easier. So I'm going to place the eyelet on top of the anvil. Then here's the setter. This is going to be loud for a second. Move it so you can see it better. So I have the setter. I'm going to do it 2 more times. Sorry how loud that was. But then you turn it over and then it's secure, okay? That's what I'm going to do for every single one of these. And so if you don't have a tool like this, I think it even came smaller. This is all from my scrapbooking days. You can use this. It's the same thing. There's the anvil and there's the setter. So let's try this again, but using the tool. So I make my hole. Place my eyelet. So this is faced up on the finished side, okay? I'm going to do the same thing, place it on the anvil, and then I have the setter on top. press, voila, and it's done. Much quieter, but if you don't have this, the eyelets will come with the anvil and the setter. So it's a little loud, but the same results. Okay, I'm going to do everything I just showed you in all 6 of these, and I'll meet you back here in just a bit. Okay, so all of our eyelets are in place and we're ready for the next part. So it's starting to come together, and you can choose any kind of hardware that you want. If you don't like the brass, you can get black, you can get, some bronze colors. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take our canvas. Now that can be some the actual canvas that you would paint on. It could be canvas from the fabric store. It can be drill from the fabric store. It can even be a drop cloth from Home Depot or Lowe's. So you just want to have a fabric that has, some weight to it. And I'll show you what I mean. First and foremost, I would say try what you have on hand. If you already have something that you think may work, I would love for you to save the money and to try it out before you go and spend money. But I want to show you. This is the canvas. You can even hear. And then this is like a painter's rag. See how much I can stretch it? It means when we add the plaster, you're more likely that it's going to crack on something really thin like this. But still try it out if you want. But I haven't had as good of luck on a stretchier open weave like this. You can almost see how you can see through it. So I'm going to use, first of all, what I like the canvas because I can have these raw edges. I love that it'll keep the shape that I cut it to. I like that it has enough weight that when I add the plaster, it's not going to crack as much, and I'm more likely to have success using something like a drill, a drop cloth, or this thicker canvas, okay? So right now I'm just going to get my scissors out and I'm going to do some quick measurements. I wanted to show you real quick. I'm going to give you all the measurements in a bit. Let me move this out of the way. I have my canvas. I have it in strips and folded in half, and I kind of figured out how large I want my pages to be of fabric. So I'm just putting them on top, and that's how I'm doing quick measurements, barely cutting into it and then tearing, because I want these rough edges on my signatures, okay? So I'll be back in a bit and I'll show you more of the measurements, and that's going to be different for each of us based upon, what size we choose to make our journals. And this is, I just wanted to show you the actual ripping. So I'm just barely cutting in and then ripping. I'm going to keep doing that until I have 3 signatures, and each signature will have 3 complete spreads. Okay, now I want to explain things a little more so it's as clear as it can be. So we are going to create out of our fabric here 3 separate signatures. And the signatures are just this grouping that will be attached inside of our journal. They're all the same size. or roughly, because I tore them, but they are around 10.5 wide by about 7 inches. And that is based upon my journal. So you're gonna have to do your measurements. You just wanna make sure that they're going to fit within your journal, okay? And it doesn't matter if it goes, you know, down farther or up farther or out. I was just making mine to fit inside. So what we're going to do for each of these is we are going to eventually be poking holes, and then we will be attaching it through our eyelets with our metal, okay? So here's some of our thin metal that we are going to be attaching it with. All right. Now, before we can do that though, is that I need to be putting plaster on each of these. And because I do not want the middle to have plaster, I'm just going to make sure I make a kind of a thin line on each one with a pencil, and or just to kind of note where it's going to be in the middle, that I make sure I'm putting plaster on the sides, okay? And so this will be signature 1, this will be signature 2, and this will be signature 3. And now you kind of see why it was so thick, right? We're gonna have this really cool thick book full of plaster pages that's going to be, I just think, beautiful. So I'm going to start marking the middle real quick with a pencil, and I'm gonna start getting my plaster ready. I put some cardboard down on my desk just to not get plaster all over the place. And I have some palette knives of some different sizes here. I have my Venetian plaster all ready to go. And I have marked in the middle on each one of my fabric pages what the middle is, to make sure that I'm staying clear of that area, because that is where it's going to fold, and it's also where I'm going to attach the metal. And the biggest thing that I want to do is not make it too thick, and I want to leave the edges, and it's just going to be like spreading frosting, okay? I feel like I'm cheating on using the Venetian plaster. I usually always use the plaster of Paris, which I love, but this is super easy because it's already mixed for me and ready to go. And then if I need to shut the can, I can. Okay. Now, I like some texture in here, so I'm going to bring this down a little. So I'm going to do the other side. I just want you to see how you don't have to get everything, and you definitely do not have to be perfect. And that makes it, I think, more interesting, and you're going to like it better in the end. And if there's any huge area that needs to be sanded, we can do that. And in a little bit, we're going to also play around with adding marks into this. And really the only rule I have is to not get it in the middle. And then I got it in the middle. Okay, so I just really want you to see. And we're going to put this one aside, and once it's dry, we will do the other side. And for these last three, I want to show how you can add texture and mark making in this. So let's bring this down a little. Okay, and as we're working, I want to show you some things that we can do. So I have, and before we start, I have a stamp, and some things I'm going to show you and then I'll cover right back up. I even have some metal images. This is just a vintage roller stamp. I have the nails that I showed you earlier. I have some vintage rusty elements here. I even have some wire brushes. But really, the things that I use the most, they're going to be some sculpting tools, a knife, these pattern cutters and pastry, and that's a really good start right here. Okay, so I'm going to bring in some of the plaster. And don't worry if some of your strings get in there. I have some of the pages that I've already done. I just brought all the string in that was around it, and I just let them be right into the page and become part of the interest and the texture. Okay, so I'm going to show you, even go down farther. So you're just doing some mark making. And I'm going to kind of put these 3 pages in the middle of all the other ones. So I'll mix up some of the signatures. Okay, so I'm going to leave some of this. I'm going to take some of this away. I'm going to take some of this away here. And it's already starting to dry, so you have to work quick. Another thing is we can come in and just do scratches. Okay. And we're going to do this into your dry also. But for right now, I just wanted to talk about, so I'm going to actually move on from this one because it is already drying too much. And anything that's too clumpy, we will just sand it out. Okay, let's do another side. And this time, I'd like to bring in some of our words, okay? So think of any images that you have. We can also do image transfers on these. Okay. You can put it right in the plaster and just use it as glue almost. And then it's just waiting for us later. And that's why I keep hitting. And we can even do some lines around that. Okay. All right, let's do the same thing again. As I said before, don't worry about if your string is getting in there. I'm just going to do one side at a time because it dries so quickly. Okay, so same thing. You come in and make marks, add some texture. Use a stamp. You can use anything really for a stamp. This is cool. It left some of the rust behind. So that's fun. Do the other side. Let's add some cheesecloth. I have some rust-dyed cheesecloth that I'm just going to include. And if you want to do your own rust dyeing, you can take a fabric like a muslin or cheesecloth. Those are really good receptors of rust. And you spray them with a mixture of half water and half white vinegar. Get your surface nice, get your fabric nice and wet. And then you take a rusty object and you wrap it up in that and tie it with some twine. And it'll also dye your twine. And then squirt it again. And then set it out in the sun if you can. And when you open it up, you'll have some really cool rust transfers. All right, so for this, I don't want a ton of it, but I'm going to take a little bit. I'm going to stretch it out. And this is even, I can smell, this has some coffee dyeing on it too. Okay, so just going to put this in my plaster. And I don't want all of this, so I'm going to cut some of this off. I'm going to let some of this come on down. Now, if you wanted to, you could just stamp it with the cheesecloth, okay? So I'm going to open some of it up so I can see some of that rust. And I'm going to do this again. So I want this to kind of bleed down here, okay? So I'm using my plaster here almost like a glue. Okay, let's try one more page. Same thing. Okay. I'm going to add the paper, some words on it. I'm going to do this image of these women that I found at a local antique shop. If I can, take the back off. Some of it's coming off, and that's okay. So let's get this attached. And let's get the top off. Let's even separate them. Okay. And I'm just going to do some mark making. And I'm not sure I like that tool, so let me bring it down for you so you can see a little better. While the plaster's wet, I'm just going to come in with a knife. But you have to work quickly because you won't have much time. And really, I'm just trying to show you right now some of the quick things you can do on these pages, and you might find that you want to do all of your pages with something, and then when you come in later, see, I can extend her lines if I want. This has definitely hers. And this is already starting to dry, so I don't have much. Oops, sorry. Here, let me. I'm going to quickly come in here and do a little more. And we're going to do some other marks once it's dry, too. If you don't like something, you can just erase it. And even if you don't like it once it has dried, we can always use sandpaper and we can erase it. So I'm going to go ahead, when these are dry, I'm going to cover the other sides also of each of these. So far we've put marks into our wet plaster, and we've also put words and photos, and we put the cheesecloth and even rust. And so just get creative with what you have around you. And these are just these little simple backdrops. We could have a whole class just on this, but we really want to get to, what we put on top of all of this. And so I will let these dry and then come back in a few hours and do the same thing on the other side. Thought while it's wet, I'm going to show you one more thing. How you can come in with paint and you can definitely tint your plaster. And then when you make your marks, you will even notice them more because of your white background. And let's let it dry.